What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking WWE Roadblock End of the Line from December of 2016. Now, last week I did mistakenly say that today I would be reviewing the TNA Victory Road 2004 pay-per-view, but that was before I realized they already had Roadblock End of the Line already on the schedule for today's Tuesday episode. So I will talk about the Victory Road 04 pay-per-view next week, as seen on the Global Wrestling Network, the new TNA app, which I think is great. I haven't watched too much of it yet, but I will be next week for the Victory Road show. We do not have another Roadblock pay-per-view scheduled. I usually wait until the one-year anniversary of certain pay-per-views to talk about them. Like Clash of Champions was in September of 2016, but I waited to review that one because we had Clash of Champions this past Sunday, so I talked about that last Tuesday. We do not have another Roadblock pay-per-view, and we likely never will. The first Roadblock I thought was great. They had earlier on in 2016, it was kind of exactly that, a roadblock on the road to WrestleMania between the Fastlane pay-per-view and WrestleMania 32, and I thought it was a very enjoyable WWE Network special, and then they brought it back at the end of the year as a Raw pay-per-view, and it wasn't good. It was kind of a whimper for Raw on the in the tail end of 2016 in WWE. But we'll talk more about that as we kind of get into my review. But yeah, point of the matter being is that we're coming up, I think yesterday actually marked the one-year anniversary of this pay-per-view, of this abysmal event. And I figured I would talk about it now because there's really no other time to talk about it because we're moving on with other pay-per-views heading into 2018. So anyway, real quickly on the kickoff show, we had Rusev and Big Cass, which was a 4-minute clusterfuck with Rusev winning in 4 minutes. Who cares? I mean, the feud was terrible. If you remember the feud with Rusev and Lana and Jinder Mahal eventually got involved, the future WWE champion, Big Cass and Enzo, this was fucking terrible. So Enzo was he was hitting on Lana, going to her hotel room, and the matches weren't good, and Rusev and Cass had no chemistry. They had a rematch the next night on Raw, which I think Rusev also won by disqualification. So the whole feud was a complete waste of time. This was right where it belonged in the kickoff show, but this did nothing to make me look forward to the actual show itself. In the opener, though, one of the better matches of the night, for the Raw Tag Team titles, we had the New Day, who had just surpassed the record of Demolition as the longest reigning tag team champions of any kind in WWE history, taking on Cesaro and Sheamus with the titles on the line. So again, a good match. I really enjoyed this. I liked the Hell in a Cell match, but I thought this match was way better. It had a closing stretch, and whereas the Hell in a Cell match, I just thought it was a terrible finish. This I thought was a phenomenal finish, but the match itself was really, really good. The early goings were a bit slow, but they picked up the pace down the stretch. It's weird because New Day early on in their reign as tag team champions didn't have that many great matches, save for the three-way at TLC 2015, which I thought was exceptional. But the matches they had with the Club, with what other tag teams? The League of Nations, the Dudley Boys, they weren't that good. Some of the Uso matches were good. The Rumble match I thought was pretty damn good. This one was probably up there as one of their better matches as Raw Tag Team Champions. And they hit it out of the park. It was a great opener. In the end, the crowd was really into it. So in the end, I thought this, like I said, the finish was phenomenal. No pun intended with AJ Styles, who was not involved in the match, but you know what I'm saying. So I think it was Sheamus going for a tag to Cesaro. Cesaro pulled back his hand, and they had already teased tension between these two multiple times before on multiple occasions, because remember, these two started out as rivals, which I talked about last week in my Clash of Champions review, and they went on to team and set their sights in the Raw Tag Team titles, which they had fell short of winning on multiple occasions at Hell in a Cell, right before this pay-per-view on multiple episodes of Raw, and they would always fall short. On this occasion, they did not. So again, Cesaro I thought was teasing tension by pulling back his hand. I'm like, oh, what the fuck, he turned on Sheamus. But he didn't. He ran in the ring, was met with a Trouble in Paradise by Kofi Kingston, who then pinned Cesaro. But then the referee's like, he's not legal. So then Sheamus runs in, rolls up Kofi for the 1, 2, 3, and the crowd went nuts. And I loved how they treated this like a big deal. Like, this was very well done. Because like I said, the New Day had been tag team champions for so long. Like 16 months from SummerSlam of 2015 to December of 2016. That's a long-ass time. So it had to be a big deal when they dropped the belts. They did here. The crowd went nuts. They had, faces of shock and surprise and happiness. There was a big pop for it. People could not believe what they were seeing, although there was a pretty good chance they were dropping the belts, considering they had broke the record days earlier on Raw. It was treated like a very big moment. Cesaro and Sheamus were celebrating. Sheamus was still a dickhead. He was still a heel at this point. But the New Day sat there shocked, and they showed respect to Cesaro and vice versa. This was very well done. Again, the match was very entertaining, especially in the second half. The title change was very much needed to shake up the Raw Tag Team division, which was pretty much dead by this point. The club were floating ghosts. They had just no momentum whatsoever. Enzo and Cass, zero momentum. Cesaro and Sheamus was their seemingly last shot at the straps, taking advantage of that, winning the titles in what was a great moment. So, a good way to kick off the show. Unfortunately, it was largely downhill from there. We had Sami Zayn taking on Braun Strowman in a match with a 10-minute time limit. So, I guess the thing here with this was that if Zayn could outlast Strowman, and Strowman could not beat Zayn in the matter of 10 minutes, then Sami Zayn would win. Which makes no sense. I mean, I know that's the stipulation, but Sami Zayn never beat Braun Strowman. So the fact that he was declared the winner here was pretty silly, and the match wasn't all that good anyway. They had 10 minutes, and Strowman, it's not like he was bad, because he would go on to have great matches with Roman Reigns and others in 2017, of course. Just the whole thing I thought was poorly executed, unlike the opener. So Strowman spends 10 minutes dominating this guy. He could have beat him in 3 minutes if he wanted to, but instead he wastes time, and he beats down Sami Zayn, and then Sami Zayn gets the big hot comeback at the end, although it really was not that hot, because he only had a few minutes, and when there was 45 seconds left on the clock, and Sami Zayn was outside the ring, you knew Strowman wasn't going to win at that point. So I thought that was a bit silly. And then Sami Zayn celebrating like he just won the fucking Super Bowl when he survived the 10-minute time limit. He didn't win shit. He didn't win anything. That was what kind of confused me. So they would continue the feud, and then Strowman would go on to win the last man standing match on Raw, the onset of 2017, which I thought was a great match. This really was not. I know they were trying to tell a story with Mick Foley, who was the then Raw general manager, coming down to ringside and attempting to throw in the towel, and Sami Zayn saying, "No, don't throw in the towel. I want to win this match, or I want to survive. I want to take the beating by Braun Strowman," which he did, and he survived this. I don't know, it was kind of lackluster to me. It wasn't the big win that Sami Zayn desperately needed. Not to say that Sami should have beaten Braun here. That would have been a massive mistake. But it was just, I don't know. When they announced the time limit thing, I kind of figured Zayn would win. Otherwise, why wouldn't you make it just a normal match? This was kind of their way of giving Sami a win, but not having him pin Braun. I don't know. Just Braun came across like a complete idiot for not pinning Sami a lot sooner than he did. Or not pinning Sami at all when he had the chance. That was what kind of threw me off. After that, we had Seth Rollins taking on Chris Jericho. And what I thought was a pretty good match. By no means great. I thought they made the most of the time they had in 17 minutes. I kind of figured Rollins would win. That was the issue with this match, where they worked well together. They put together a pretty damn good match. It wasn't great. And I don't know, Jericho can have great matches from time to time, but at this stage of his career, you get what you get with Jericho, and he doesn't have bad matches. He just has kind of pretty good matches more often than not, and this was one of them. I wasn't entertained by it. I thought it was an enjoyable encounter, but there was no doubt from the get-go that Rollins was winning, and that Kevin Owens may or may not play a factor in the finish, and he did, by coming down to ringside, attempting to help Jericho win. He only cost him the match itself by serving as a distraction at ringside. Kevin Owens got kicked off the apron. Rollins capitalized, hit Jericho with the pedigree, and won the match. So I guess the whole thing with Rollins and Jericho and the feud was fine, but I guess the whole premise of the feud was that Rollins, in getting to his ultimate goal of facing Triple H, who cost him the Universal Championship many months earlier on Raw and betrayed him, whatever, that he would have to beat Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship. And he couldn't do that as long as Chris Jericho was around. So he beat Jericho here, and that was it. He did not go on to do anything from that point forward. He wasn't in the Rumble. I know Triple H cost him his spot in the Rumble match, but I don't know. It was kind of weird. So it was a good match. Very predictable, but a good match, though. For the Cruiserweight Championship, we had Rich Swann taking on the Brian Kendrick and TJ Perkins in a well-wrestled match, but no one could give two shits. And that's the fucking problem with the Cruiserweight division in 2017, 2016, whatever. These guys got off to a slow start, and it's been all downhill from there. This was a fine match, but the crowd had no reason to care. I wouldn't imagine they're watching 205 Live every week, which had just debuted a few weeks earlier. So then why would they care about this? Why should they give a shit? Like, that was my question here. So again, it was well worked. It wasn't a bad match, but you could hear a fucking pin drop in the crowd. That's how quiet they were for this thing. So in the end, Swann hit, I think Kendrick with the kick, pinned him, or whoever, I don't remember, who cares. So Swann won, he retained the title. Then the best part came afterward, when a returning Neville came down to ringside to a good pop, like, oh, Neville's still employed. I completely forgot about that. The guy had not appeared on WWE TV in over 2 months. So people are like, oh, wow, Neville's back. That's cool. Neville and Swann, yay. And Neville was still a babyface by that point, an uneventful, very forgettable, non-exciting babyface. So then it comes down to ringside and immediately lays out Rich Swann. Like, I thought I should have seen this coming because he comes down to ringside with this shit-eating grin on his face. He's clapping over the top happy, which he's been a babyface before. He was a babyface leading up to this moment, but he had never been that overt about it and clapping and smiling and shit. So I probably should have figured it out at that point. But again, he wasted no time in clocking this guy and clocking Swann, laying out TJP. It was a glorious moment. And you know the Cruiserweight division is failing and that people fail to care, they fail to care about the baby faces when they're chanting, "Thank you, Neville," at the guy for laying out the top 2 baby faces in the division. That's not good. So I thought the attack was very well done. Heel Neville was one of the best things about Raw for a very long time. The guy fucking killed it in 2017. He would go on to win the championship at the Royal Rumble. But this was what kicked off heel Neville, the king of the Cruiserweights. That's more of a Scottish accent, but the guy has been fucking killing it since in the year that he's been a heel. I know he's been gone for the last number of months, but up until that point, he was doing very, very well. In this moment was the catalyst of the heel Neville turn. After that, for the Raw Women's Championship, a 30-minute Iron Man match, or an Iron Woman match, whatever you want to call it, between Charlotte Flair and the defending champion Sasha Banks. In a very good match. I thought they mostly made the most of the time they had. I say that because it was pretty slow early on. They went like 20 minutes without a pinfall, which I'm fine with. I agree with that. I'm kind of pretty pissed usually during like 2 out of 3 falls matches when someone wins in the first like 5 minutes. Because that's completely unrealistic when you're dealing with 2 big superstars or 2 tag teams, whatever. I thought here it was well done. The issue is that the crowd sat on their hands for it. It was pretty boring, a few awkward spots, but it was still a great match. I thought it was a great match. The final third, I would say, if not the last half, I would say the final third, I thought was great. The storytelling was there. The drama, the emotion, the crowd slowly started to get more and more into it. So in the end, it was 2-2. Sasha taps out at the literal last second to give Charlotte it was 2-1 to have Charlotte tied at 2-2. So it's like she couldn't have held out for another second to ensure she won the match. I thought that was a little silly. And then they go into sudden death overtime. They battle it out, and Sasha's bleeding from the mouth as always. And then finally Charlotte, I think she pinned Sasha. No, she forced her to tap out. To win back the Raw Women's Championship. So I'm thinking, okay, they go into overtime. That's where Sasha wins to finally retain her title and win the feud. Nope. Charlotte won back the belt, and I was not happy about that. And I don't think Sasha's been the same since. Now, she won the title back at SummerSlam, albeit for 8 days. And she's still popular. But I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, and that I have not cared about Sasha since. Because it's obvious she's a fucking loser. When was the last time she won a big match without losing right afterwards? Yes, she beat Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam. Yes, but she lost the belt the very next week. And all the times that she beat Nia Jax, she would lose right afterward. She lost to WrestleMania. She's a fucking loser. Sasha Banks is a loser, and she's not, like, in terms of her in-ring ability. She's very good, but from a storyline standpoint, as a babyface anyway, Sasha Banks is a loser. And maybe that was designed to plant the seeds for a Sasha Banks heel turn, but they never went in that direction. They completely just went off track and did the four-way with all the women at WrestleMania, which was kind of a disappointment. It was a good match, but I was hoping for Banks and Bayley. Whatever. Again, though, going back to this match, I thought it was a great final third of the match. The sudden death overtime was well done, aside from the fact that Charlotte won and that she was champion for like the fucking fourth time in the matter of 6 months. That was kind of overkill, but as a match, this was easily the best thing in the entire show and very, very, very good. The main event for the Universal Championship, Kevin Owens defending against Roman Reigns, who is the then United States Champion. His belt was not on the line here. I didn't think Roman would win, but I thought the finish here fucking sucked. This was terrible. So they have like a 25 minute match, which was very boring for the most part, by the way. And it's not that they don't have good chemistry either, because they had a no DQ match at the Rumble the very next month, and I thought that match was one of the better matches of the year. Maybe one of the better matches in Roman Reigns' career. That was a great match. An awesome Universal title match. This, not so much. Very, very boring, and maybe that was because they had the shark cage and the no DQ stipulation. This was a standard singles match, and you knew exactly where it was going. After everything that happened with Jericho and Owens in Jericho's match with Rollins and everything else we saw backstage, you knew Jericho would get involved one way or another, whether it be to cost KO the belt or to do whatever. He was getting involved here, or to help KO, or to cost KO, whatever. You knew he was going to resurface at some point, which is why the crowd bought into none of the near falls. It was a lot like the Rollins match from Clash of Champions that I talked about last week, where they got a ton of time to kill the remainder of the 3-hour show, and it was just a whole lot of nothing. KO jumping off the commentary table and doing the senton splash and all this other stuff off the steel steps, which is fine, and it was a cool little spot, but that was the only thing the crowd cared about in the entire match. It was a really boring match. They finally picked up the pace down the stretch. By that point, it was too late, though, and the finish just ruined it. It would have been fine if the match was boring, but they had a good, hot closing stretch. But then the finish sucked. So then Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns has him all lined up for the spear. He hits KO with the spear. It looks like he has the match won. In comes Chris Jericho. He's got his sights set on Roman Reigns, and then Kevin Owens hits him with a code breaker. And it's like, okay, he turned on Kevin Owens, and he ensured the championship was kept on him, but at least he turned on Kevin Owens. Not even that happened. And I love Jericho, don't get me wrong. I loved Jericho, I should say. I love the whole tag team and the Festival of Friendship. The betrayal on that episode of Raw a few months later was a lot better done than this. And I was happy they held off on it. But I thought this was a terrible finish to a pay-per-view. Maybe on Raw you can get away with this shit. On a pay-per-view, it felt like a fucking waste. So Jericho lays out Owens and then reveals he was in cahoots with him the entire time. I don't think Owens knew about it. Based off his facial expression, like in storyline, obviously, it didn't look like he was in on it, but Jericho kind of forgave him or whatever. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I forgot about the fallout because it's better off forgotten at this point because it wasn't that good of a storyline. Around this point in time with Roman and KO and Jericho when they teased the split, it was just very predictable. So they reunite. The belt is kept on KO, which was for the best. They should not have put the belt on Roman Reigns while he was still United States Champion. That would have been completely dumb. So again, a terrible finish though, with Kevin Owens retaining the title here by disqualification. Seth Rollins comes out. They lay out Chris Jericho, put him through the commentary table at ringside with a pop-up powerbomb or the Shield powerbomb, whatever, Sans, Dean Ambrose. They then set their sights on Kevin Owens and put him through a commentary table, the Raw commentary table, at the top of the stage to close out the show. So we get a little mini Shield reunion here, which we'd already seen like the previous week on Raw, so it wasn't even that big of a moment. And I would have just gone with the Iron Man match. I wasn't happy with that result either, but that was a better match. I was actually kind of shocked because I think a lot of people were looking forward to seeing the women headline another pay-per-view. But maybe in WWE's mind, either they wanted to close out the show with the Shield reunion for a send the crowd home happy moment, or I'm not sure, because they already had the women overshadow Owens and Rollins at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. They headlined that show over the Universal Championship match. And they weren't in the main event. Kevin Owens was not in the main event of Survivor Series, so maybe this was their way of making up for it, because he was also not in the main event of the Royal Rumble. He defended the belt there, but he was not in the main event, of course. So maybe this was their way of giving him some shine, which I understand, but I thought the women's match, despite the not my favorite finish in the world, that would have been a better way to close out the show. So overall, a very forgettable pay-per-view. I forgot about most of the matches on the show until I watched it back. I would not recommend watching it back. For any one match, I would say the women's match by far between Charlotte and Sasha. I thought they worked very well together. They had great chemistry, an awesome feud. I didn't think Charlotte winning on pay-per-view again was the right call, making that belt feel completely worthless in the process, in my opinion. But the match itself, the first ever women's Iron Man match in the main roster, was historic for that reason alone. It was a great match, so watch that back. Rollins and Jericho was entertaining, but it wasn't like the hottest thing on the entire show by any stretch. I mean, it was good, but I don't know if it's worth watching again. The opener, I would say check that out too, because the match is entertaining. They got about 10 minutes. They could have gone longer, but it was a good match, and I thought the finish was excellent. All the other finishes on the show were very questionable. So if anything, watch back the women's match, watch back Neville's return, not the Cruiserweight match, but Neville's return afterwards, which Austin Aries made his main roster debut on commentary during that match, which was also really, really cool. And the tag titles changing hands as well. So overall, not a great show. I would not watch it back, but watch it back if only for those few matches and segments I just mentioned. So that is my review of Roadblock End of the Line from December of 2016. As I mentioned earlier, I will be talking about TNA Victory Road 2004 as seen on the Global Wrestling Network next Tuesday right here on WrestleRant. In the meantime and in between time, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share the video as well. And follow me on Twitter, find me on Facebook, and all that other good shit, all in the description box down below. And visit nextairwrestling.net for more written reviews of Raw, this very pay-per-view, SmackDown, Main Event, NXT, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and everything else in between. So anyway, guys, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the remainder of the holiday season. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.